Hey there, rock stars. A quick little announcement here before we jump into today's podcast, which I think you're really going to enjoy. We are in the middle of our kickoff for the Cupid Challenge 2024, meaning right now you can sign up for the challenge. That'll be 14 days of some fun, exciting, sometimes romantic things that we'll be sending out to you via email. There'll be a video in there with some instructions and some fun stuff to do. We've done this in the past, and we have had a blast doing it ourselves. We'll be doing it right along with you. So you can sign up right below here, yourmarriagematters.com/CC24. You can see it in the show notes if you're listening to this on audio, or you can go to our Facebook group, Your Marriage Matters, and there'll be a way to sign up there. So let's jump into the content. Again, I think you're going to enjoy this one. Hey there, gang. It's Jim.
And Christy.
Jacobus with Your Marriage Matters, podcast number 174. And babe, we're in a series right now where we've been talking about the whole continuum of core beliefs, thoughts, actions, and habits. And this week, we're going to talk about how we actually get to actions. And guys, I got to tell you what, we're going to talk about negative actions and positive actions. And I gave Christy the choice, and you were kind enough to take the negative one. So,
well, actually, I think it's when we look at the negatives, it gives us the most work and most room for improvement.
That's true.
And there was recently a study, and I think we talked about this last time. Which do you think would help more, to eliminate the negatives or add the positives? And the study had suggested that if you eliminate some of your negative thoughts and behaviors, that actually will have more input if you just add positives. Both
Right.
of them are important, but one of them seems to be the root for where our thoughts come from.
So I have the least important of the two.
Exactly. That's
all right. Well, it's natural that you should do the most important.
There you go.
Tell everybody a little bit about how we get from our core beliefs to thoughts and actions.
Well, where we get our core beliefs and our thoughts is a lot of times a byproduct of formative years and how we grew up and what we think about ourselves. And I see so many people who struggle with their attitudes and their core beliefs about themselves, which, as we've said before, impacts your thoughts and it impacts your actions. So where we get our core beliefs from is a byproduct of a lot of factors, but we're dynamic and we're growing, and those can change.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hit it. So it's all yours, sweet thing.
So when we're thinking about negative thoughts or core beliefs about marriage, there's two aspects that I want to look at. One of them can come from within, what I feel about myself in a relationship, how I feel. Am I worthy of being loved? Do I always mess up relationships? Am I carrying with me baggage from past relationships? Am I the problem? Is my core beliefs at the center of what's going on? The second thing is it can be a negative core beliefs about the institution of marriage. How do I feel about marriage? In the culture today, the generation coming now, there's fewer marriages because of the institution of marriage might not have been the route that all people take. And in previous generations, it was just assumed that you grow up, get married, have kids, have a family and all that. Well, this generation might be bucking that trend just a little bit. Okay. So, but we could have negative thoughts and negative beliefs and core values about marriage itself. For some people, they think marriage is a trap. It's going to be a way that it confines my personal freedom and personal responsibility and accountability. And for some people, they think that all marriages are going to end in disappointment or divorce.
Yeah.
And so to them, the issue of marriage is one that doesn't have they lived happily ever after. And then the other thing is that some people feel commitment to one person is unrealistic. It's not realistic that I would stay married to someone throughout my lifetime.
How do you feel about that?
I'm pretty set that I like it.
I hope so.
I want to stay that way.
That's our idea.
So back to one of those thoughts is that marriage is a trap and it restrains my personal freedom. When somebody has that core belief, a lot of times what they'll feel is a reluctance to commit, and they feel suffocated, and personal choices, I don't have responsibility for that. I have to take into account your thoughts, wants, and desires. And if I'm not good at asking for what I want or feel or need, then I'm feeling even more trapped, might be a good word. Marriage can, in the negative context, for people, make them think that my personal freedoms are impinged upon. So that I can't explore my personal individual wants, desires, and everything. And then some people grow to resent the commitment of being committed to another person and all that comes with that. They want what they perceive as personal freedom, and they want their own autonomy. I don't have to be responsible to or for somebody else. So when you see these negative core beliefs about marriage, if they came from within, about how I feel about myself or how I feel about being committed to another person, you can see that that's going to lead to some actions that won't necessarily be in a healthy marriage.
Right.
It won't be productive. So when people view marriage as a trap that restricts their personal freedom, one of the things they can do is they can simply withdraw. They cannot be emotionally invested in the relationship. They withdraw from that commitment. They withdraw from the other person in ways that you might not see it because it's an emotional detachment, or it can be physical where they're not spending as much time with the other person. They're having other things get in the way of their relationship and not prioritizing it. They seek their personal space at the expense of the shared experiences. I'm doing stuff by myself. You see it a lot of times. People live almost parallel marriages. They're still married, but they're not in a connected relationship.
Almost like more like roommates.
Exactly. So this withdrawal is one thing that they can take the action of. The next thing is that fear or that restriction can lead to resistance to commitment. They just don't want to get committed to another person. And what that can look like is they hesitate or they don't go all in. They don't go all in the marriage. They kind of always keep a little bit of a distance.
Hold a little something back.
Exactly. Then in the poker terms, it's going all in. They're not showing their cards. They're just kind of staying on the edge of commitment. And then the one that I think is really destructive, and you can see the byproduct, the actions that are a byproduct of this, is when they engage in dangerous and destructive patterns and habits. And that would be people who take to substance abuse, flirt, or get involved with an actual affair, show their alliances to other people, don't keep the intimacy in the marriage one where they're sharing their inner thoughts and feelings with their spouse. They're doing it in other ways. And sometimes this is done so they can have a little bit of a reclaiming of their personal freedom. It's kind of like, I don't want to say acting out, but it's kind of a way in which they can say, here's how I'm digging into my personal needs by not acting in a way that's healthy for a marriage. So.
In all of your marriage counseling that you do you see any one of these more than others, or do you feel like they show up more often? They're across the board.
I think there's a little bit of everything when marriages get in trouble. It's the I want to blame the other person. I want to look at their actions not as a byproduct of what has happened to us as a couple, but they're doing this. Right. If they would, I would, type thing. And so a lot of times I think it can come out in a variety of ways. And sometimes people will say, well, we never fight. We don't argue. We don't get into arguments, but there's not a connection there. Yeah. So yes, they don't struggle from actively having conflicts, but they also don't struggle with conflicts that lead them to a stronger relationship, to a higher ground.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
well, so gang, again, the whole idea is we have core beliefs, thoughts, and actions. And so many times, babe, I think as couples, and we're guilty of this too, is that if I could just fix the action, then everything would be better. And reality is we have to fix that core belief. We have to ask ourselves, where did that come from? What's the beginning of that? Jason and I were talking about something this morning, and I asked him the question about something that he was telling me that he gets irritated by. And I said, where does that come from? And he said, you. I was like, okay, well, I'm glad I'm passing on certain things. He goes, He goes, it's one of the very few negative things, but I do think that kind of comes from growing up around you. Talk about being competitive.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
You think,
Yes.
think that might have,
just
it was it from you? You don't think? Probably not.
Probably not.
Okay. So anyway, gang, so that's how we get to the negative actions. And then that creates negative habits, which we're going to talk about next week. Let's talk about positive things that come out of the institution of marriage. And the first thing is shared growth. And I think about that, babe, in the context we talk about the commitment that we both have to being the best version of ourselves. Is that shared growth, and we're both going to get better, and consequently the marriage gets better. Another great core belief is that we have unconditional love for each other. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that in a couple of episodes already, that we believe marriage is the opportunity for us to learn God's unconditional love for us and how we unconditionally love each other. Mm-hmm. Which that means that I'm gonna accept you the way you are. That doesn't mean we're not both committed to becoming better versions of ourselves, mm-hmm. but it's an unconditional love. And that's a great core belief about marriage, is that we're going to experience that. And then the last thing is that we're partners for life. We're mm-hmm. not quitting. We don't ever quit. And again, I got to give Christy credit for this. If you've not heard our story, you can look back some podcasts. I'll link back to it in the show notes down below. But I was divorced twice before I met Christy. And one of the things that she brought to our marriage was we don't quit. All right. And that's been a huge game changer for me, particularly early on in our marriage. Just the whole idea we're not going to quit. So out of those core beliefs, and let's talk about shared growth, because we really feel like that's a huge thing to the two of us. Out of that comes thoughts like mutually empowering each other. In other words, you want to grow, I want to grow. And so we're both kind of helping each other, and we're pushing each other along by empowering each other to become better versions of ourselves. The second thing is there's strength in unity. The two of us, sharing with each other and leaning on each other and helping each other and failing with each other. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're going to fail, but that also leads us to maybe a third thought that comes out of the whole shared growth and better versions is we get to celebrate when we get better. Mm-hmm. Celebrate when you grow, celebrate when I grow. Celebrate when Team Jacobus grows. And we talk a lot about Team Jacobus here because, again, that's kind of how we look at marriage, is that the team, the marriage is more important than either one of us individually. Right. And so that really, those are some thoughts there that come out of the whole, we're going to get better. We're going to keep growing. We're going to keep learning. Now, out of that comes some really cool actions. And next week we'll talk about habits that comes out of those actions, how you create habits out of those actions. But one of the actions is just checking in with each other regularly. Right. How you doing? How's it going? How's that? How's your pickleball? How's your serve?
Oh no, tragedy.
Well, yeah, but and then that leads to the whole collaborative goal setting. Mm-hmm. Well, how about we both work together to improve your serve? And mm-hmm. as much as people want to criticize me for not being a good teacher, because you may not be the best player. Mm-hmm. All right. I think you're actually better than you give yourself credit for, but we get to collaborate on these things. We get to work together on stuff. And that to me, babe, is a lot of fun. I was just thinking along that line, our collaboration over the last 3 or 4 months about cooking more at home, mm-hmm. Scheduling who's going to cook, when they're going to cook, what are we going to cook, and all that. To me, that is what brings us together as a couple, is right. that we have these things that we check in on, and we're collaborating on things. And we'll talk next week, gang. We're really going to dive into a couple of things that we do that are habits that we feel like will be really helpful. But when we collaborate on stuff and we're working together on stuff and we're both committed to stuff, then again, we get to celebrate those things together.
Right. And it's interesting because we do a weekly check-in.
Yeah.
We do, and we're intentional about that. And we're mindful of it, and it's on our calendar, and it's Sunday evening. And so we really do bring some intentionality to that. The one that, as we're going through this, that I look at, because we're a work in progress too, is the celebrating the achievements together.
Yeah.
And I think we do it. I think we celebrate certain things, but just as a hint to our couples, sometimes when we want to celebrate things together, it might not be the major milestones like birthdays and anniversaries.
Sometimes little bitty things are huge.
I know. And around here, real excited because the Texans, and we're celebrating that right now. But sometimes it's the kind of like we talked about with the start of the year, we're going to celebrate the things that are good and, we're birthdays and different things like that. But sometimes, like the weather here has been cold recently, sometimes we can celebrate the fact that this didn't lead to a lot of problems, knock on wood. So,
yeah, we're not out of it yet. I wish you hadn't said that.
I know.
Come on.
I know.
Come on, girl. You know better than that. Well, and again, though, so it's like I'll go play pickleball and I come back and you played up there with your friends and everything. And one of the first things is, how was your game today? How was your serve?
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of catch me up on all of that. So again, gang, we have these core beliefs, thoughts, actions. They can be negative. They can be positive. The whole idea is, what do we do about it? I mean, how do we let's talk about the negatives. I think you're right. Well, a lot of times get rid of a negative habit or a negative thought, a negative action, a negative core belief can be more valuable to us than developing a positive one, because a lot of times out of the negative, all right, that we do will come a positive new thing. So what do we tell people? What do we do about it? What do we recommend people do about dealing with these negative actions that are a product of negative thoughts, which are a product of a negative core belief?
Well, I think it starts with self-reflection. You look at yourself and you say, what are the negative core beliefs that are influencing my actions? What is it that I think about myself that could be impacting the relationship? And then also reflect on how these beliefs have impacted our relationship, and my attitudes. Is this something I need to dive into and make some changes? Sometimes I think when people look at themselves and they see a negative, they want to throw up their hands and go, that's just how I am. And sometimes even with positive actions, there can be a negative belief behind it.
And in order to be able to do that, gang, one of the things we have to do is we got to be willing to get real with ourselves. We've got to be willing to be honest with ourselves. We've got to be willing to look in the mirror and own our part of everything, which I think is a huge part of being successful in any relationship and in life in general, is that personal accountability. I mean, this is on me, right? And the second thing to that, we talked about that a lot the last couple of weeks, is I got to let go of being responsible for your part. All right. Now, I want to be an assistance to you. I want to celebrate with you. I want to collaborate with you. But I really am not in a position to try to change, cure, or what's the other C? Control you. All right. Dang it. You had to bring that one up. I don't get to control you. So we've got to get real. And again, we've got to be honest. We've got to be straightforward. I've got to own my part, but I've got to let you own your own part and let go of that myself.
Right. And sometimes I think you just brought up a great example, being competitive. I, in my nature, am not a competitive person. And sometimes, what happens when what you want and could help me to become the best version of myself and what I'm struggling with. And sometimes that kind of goes back to unconditional support. That can be difficult. It's, we always want to say, I give everybody unconditional support or unconditional love. And if there's a behavior or action that maybe isn't even intentional, but it's causing some strife in the relationship, we do want to look at that. We don't want to sweep it under the rug and go, that's just how you are. But we do want to spend some time saying, okay, what's the best way to solve this and everything. And I think number 3 would be challenging negative thoughts. When you have those negative thoughts that come in that says, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not destined to be in a long-term relationship, I keep messing up relationships, I think you want to challenge those because those are sabotaging not only your relationships, but your personal health. So I think that's always going to be one of the things you want to do when you encounter those negative core beliefs or thoughts.
And I think along that line, it's so important that we realize I'm not perfect. I know I'm not. I'm a work in progress. I think too many times when we're working with couples out there, they look at their spouses going, well, they're a work in progress. And, in reality is I always want to go, how about you, boy? How you doing, mister? Reminds me of couples we worked with in the past, where I've done the proverbial verbal punch in the nose of the guy and ask questions along, how respectful do you think you are? I'm very, really? So I think it's important that you're right, that we challenge that, that we both commit to always challenging that. I hope we never stop doing that. And then the fourth thing about what we can do about it, babe, and I like this, and I think we do a really good job, and we're going to keep getting better at it, keep getting better at it. I think it's one of the skill sets that we worked on early on, and we teach a lot, is that we're constantly communicating with each other. We're open, we're transparent. Hey, I'm struggling with this. Hey, I'm sorry, I messed up there. Hey, let's work on this together. Hey, how can we do this? Hey, how do you, we do a really good job of communicating. It's rare that we would sweep something under the rug and not talk about it. I'm not saying we haven't done it, gang. Not saying we won't do it in the future,
Especially
but I think it is one of our strengths from a skill set standpoint. And I think we've gotten really good because I finally learned to respect the skills you bring to the marriage, but we've got really good at solving problems together. And that gives us a lot of confidence. So we've got to be willing to communicate. We've got to be willing to talk. We've got to be willing to deal with those things. And that's going to give us the tools that we need in order to get to the next level. So we're going to always give you homework. And this is a pretty simple homework this week. If you're the only one watching the video and everything, we want to ask yourself, what is the one thing that I can do this week to move myself in the forward direction? And if I was 100% everything the person that I need to be, if I was completely finished, what would my marriage look like? So what can I do to move forward this week? What can I do to get better? And if I was 100% the best version of myself, what kind of marriage would I have? Now, if you're a couple, you're going to ask yourselves that together. Sit down, do a check-in, great place to start, and ask yourselves, what's the one thing we can do together? What's one thing I can do personally to move forward? And if we were 100% the best versions of ourselves individually and as a couple, what would our life be like? And the answer to that's going to be amazing. I guarantee you, if you are both everything you could be and your marriage is everything you could be, you'd be experiencing things like you can't even imagine. And I think that's the best part of it. So what do you want to leave everybody with before we get out of here today?
Well, there's a couple of things coming up that we're very excited about.
Yep.
Starting February 1st, we're going to be doing the Cupid Challenge. And we're going to use this as an opportunity to do just that, challenge couples to bring out the best in their relationships and the best in themselves. I think sometimes when we're talking about counseling and therapy and marriage work and all that, it seems like it can be negative.
Yeah.
And what we'd like to build on is some of the positive. I know that sounds contrary to what I said earlier. Sometimes you do want to work on eliminating some of the negative, but you also need to celebrate those milestones.
Yeah.
And so I'm really looking forward to the Cupid Challenge in just a couple of weeks. So we'll get started on that real soon.
Yeah. And you can sign up down below in the show notes. There's a link to yourmarriagematters.com/CC24. You can register there, and every day we're going to be sending out a video with a simple, fun, sometimes encouraging, sometimes challenging, sometimes romantic, little leading up to Valentine's Day, which, by the way, is our anniversary.
Right.
I'm excited about that.
Exactly.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. The other thing, babe, that we got coming up is we're going to be teaching a marriage retreat called the One Night of Oneness at Grace Point Church in Portland, Texas. That is February 23rd. We'll share more information with you when that registration comes out. But I'm really looking forward to that. So, gang, again, and I realize we talk about this a lot from the standpoint of work, but I'm going to tell you, it's the most valuable work that you will ever do. Nothing will change your life more than having a great relationship with your spouse. We believe we have a really good one. It's going to keep getting better because we're both committed to that. But we want you to understand that your marriage matters. It really matters a lot, obviously, to you. And there's things you can do about that, but it matters to your kids. It matters to your family. It matters to your community, to your neighborhood. And we want you to know that it matters to us. And that's why we're here. We're here to committed to sharing with you all the strategies, tactics, skills, and mindset we know of. And we're trying to learn some more to share with you so that you can experience everything that you hope for when you walk down that aisle and said, I do. And again, we want you to have the best of the best. And so that's what we're here for. If you have any questions, you can put it in the show notes down there. Go to our Facebook group. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Go to our YouTube channel. Wherever you're catching onto this, do us a favor. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that, smash that like button and subscribe. If you're listening to this on podcasts at Spotify or Apple or wherever, do us a favor. If we've earned it, and only if we've earned it, do a review and share with everybody what you like. That helps other people find us. And if you don't mind, send the link to this to somebody you feel like could benefit from it. We'd really appreciate that. We love you. We appreciate you guys. And babe, I love you.
I love you too.
Bye, gang. We'll see you next week. Okay.
Sorry, I had that stupid cough. Ugh.